Hello. Woke up with a headache that felt like I had a drill press going straight through my head. It was raining all day, so I slept most of the day. Be completely honest, feeling a little under the weather, literally and figuratively. Not sure if you can relate, but there's a line from a song by the Eagles, "Life in the Fast Lane, everything all the time." I always loved that line. This weekend was one of those everything all the time weekends. A lot of stuff going on all at once. It's not big surprise. This is kind of a personal video, along with something that may shock. I don't maybe not shock, but may alarm some people because of what I'm going to say about a particular something that Hubbard wrote. A couple of things, but one in particular. I'm not going to pull out tons of references. I have What's Wrong with This Universe in front of me right now. And the reason I'm going to talk about it is because, believe it or not, whenever I read the some people read the Bible, some people read the Quran, some people read Scientology books, some people read self-help books, some people read whatever they want to read. But there's some classic literature, or classic texts, or classic whatever. My particular favorites have been The Art of War, the Tao Te Ching, Proverbs, and Psalms, and some of the Gospels. The four Gospels. Now, just so you know, before I read this and tell you my interpretation of it, there is no part of me that validates the study of Scientology. No part of me that validates it. However, there are if a madman speaks the truth, it's recognized as truth. It's whenever he goes off into his mad ramblings that you it's like, okay, he's clearly lost his mind. But if someone you consider crazy or a madman says something that is validated in other religions or studies or texts or whatever, there's no disputing the validity of it. And problem with one of the most insidious things about Scientology is that Hubbard took some of the most beautiful, simple truths and then started to go crazy in elaborating and trying to think he could expound and elaborate and improve what was already a basic truth that you knew. And that's for me the basic truths. When I see them, I recognize them as such, and at least for me. And when I look back at the times when I was on course, very first times on course, and there was a idea presented that I already had considered or had already studied in some other religion, I was like, for some reason it felt like a new piece of information, something that I had already known but rediscovered, or had forgotten and rediscovered. So, there's two things that I want to talk about. One of them is in what's wrong with this universe. It's from the Philadelphia Doctor course, which if you follow the supporters group, there's people who, say, I studied the PDCs, because it's a big course, right? It's called a doctorate course. And indeed, the time you spend in Scientology learning some of the courses, you could have easily gotten a degree in something else more useful. Some cases, multiple degrees, or even a doctorate. But in What's Wrong with This Universe from the PDCs, there is a definite influence of the Tao Te Ching and the Art of War, in that what you think about tends to expand. And not just the Tao Te Ching and the Art of War, but also the Dhammapada and the sayings of the Buddha and the Buddha Sutras. In the sayings of the Buddha, in the first saying of the Buddha is, we are what we think. With our thoughts we make the world. And so, with those things in mind, what you think about tends to expand. With our thoughts we make the world. Here are the 3 quotes from What's Wrong with This Universe out of the hard sell pack that, believe it or not, in his own words, actually check out. I'm not validating Scientology. You can't validate truth. Truth is truth. Now, he does have his own language, just like when you read something in different translations. So the first quote is, that which a person works hardest on, he winds up having. That's one of the fundamentals of this universe. That to which he devotes energy, he finally has. How do you work this out? Matter is condensed energy. So therefore, if you keep pouring out energy on something, you will eventually have it. I mean, it's just as simple as that, end quote. To me, this means the same thing as, with your thoughts you make the world, and what you think about tends to expand. So if all you're thinking is negative things, that will tend to expand. If you think positively, that tends to expand. So you must be very careful as to what you think. Quotation, ellipses, the more you validate something, this is alter is, because I said validate, it says validated. That's a big no-no in Scientology. But the more you validate something, the stronger it gets. Basic theory. So, the more you tell yourself, I am this, the more you're validating yourself as to whatever that is. Where he goes off the rails, and I mean way off the rails. This is one of the hooks that, see, free one hand, trap the other. Huh. How about that? I got my athletic tape on today. This is where it goes off the rails. But the energy is such that every time you try to go toward a plus or a good thing, the guy's bank will flip into a minus, and boy, if you've never examined this, you've got a real treat in store. What the fuck does that even mean? I'm not even going to try to understand it because it doesn't make any sense. What he's saying is a hook. It's a trap. He just said in the first 3 quotes something that was true. Remember, I'm not validating Scientology. What I'm doing is I'm explaining that in order to indoctrinate someone, in order to get someone to dedicate themselves to some bullshit, in other words, in order to enslave someone and get them to enslave themselves, you can't simply take a normal person, what is normal, right? You can't take a person and then start just telling them what to do. They have to believe something. There has to be some little bait of truth, some little nugget of truth that is then bait and switch. And the bait and switch here is in the nonsense that he says, but energy is such that every time, he's saying that energy or thought, whatever, is such that every time you try to go toward a plus, all right, be positive. Every time you try to be positive, then the bank will flip into a minus, which the bank, which is your subconscious, unconscious, reconscious, reactive mind, Freudian shit, stuff that has long since been dismissed as something we can't study, something that we don't know much about. You know, we cannot define that which is undefinable. That, you know, it doesn't. You can't account for something that you can't measure. Yet he tries. So he assumes that any time you have a positive thought, that the reactive mind is going to say, oh no, can't have a positive thought. And this is the hook that gets into your head. The previous 3 statements are actually pretty spot on if you know the language of Scientology. The 3rd paragraph, quote, is the hook. And when I say hook, I mean like a hook in your head or a hook in your mouth to get you to think every time you have a positive thought, there's going to be a negative thought. And that is something you have no control over without the help of Scientology. Quite clever. Very, very devious and insidious trap. Mental trap. So the last thing he says is when you devote your own energy to it, you're going to have something worth having. But when you insist on having that energy handed to you by MEST, matter, energy, space, time, you'll wind up with trash every time. What's funny about this is that that's actually kind of true too. Because if you are insisting on having energy, and this is loosely defined, handed to you by MEST, matter, energy, space-time, which is very loosely defined. That could be anything. I occupy matter. I am made of matter and energy, and I occupy space and move forward through time. So therefore, I am MEST. So when you insist on having energy handed to you by me, it's not what he says, but he says MEST. It's a clever play on words. You'll end up with trash every time. The way I see it, this was from 52. It's almost as if he was saying, I'm warning you. And there is a I don't know what lecture it is. Heard the quote the other day on some Scientology expose video about, oh, well, you walked in the door. The doors are locked now. You can't get out. You're here. Well, I can get up and walk out anytime I want, just like anybody else can, just like anybody in the Sea Org can, just like, I say that, but, you do have to plan. You can get out. There's been enough people now to have proved that. Staff, public, Sea Org, even people in INT have left. There were no chains on them. There's all hooks in their head. Mental. And I look at this reference now, and I see the truth in it, which is your thoughts, whatever they are, positive, negative, tend to expand. That part's true. If you devote yourself to having thoughts and positive perceptions and affirmations about yourself, your future, your family, anything, consistently, things will improve. But the hook is whenever you start to read and think and are constantly reading and thinking about this whole reactive mind concept. And when you have another entity, whether it's a person or the group, telling you what to devote your energy on, you'll end up with trash every time. So he's pretty much telling you right there in plain text, you're my slave. And you're so happy to be his slave because he's given you a little bit of truth. And that's all I'm saying, is that in order for someone to be enslaved, there's got to be a little bit of nugget of truth that then can be, that's the bait. And then you're like, wow, that's true. You inspect it, you look at it, that is true. And then the next part comes along and just obfuscates it. And that's like a hook in your head. So the other thing is the idea of second dynamic flows, 2D flows, relationships, family, girlfriends, boyfriends. We weren't allowed to have that on staff. It was strictly third and fourth dynamic activities. Unless it was basically arranged by the executives. And there was a CSW, and I mean, literally petition to have a relationship with somebody. And list all the reasons why you should be able to have a relationship, and then get it sent up lines and get it approved or denied. There were several times that I wanted to have a relationship with somebody, and I wrote my CSW, and I was given references to read instead. From the art book. And some other miscellaneous references. I don't know which ones. I could probably dig back and find them, but I really could care less. I got the gist of it. The gist is, if you are feeling like you need to have a relationship, but you're not ethical enough to, and you're not approved to, you don't have a CSW, what you are then to do as a handling or a well, in some senses, if you want to pull in a relationship, what you do is you create things. But the only thing you're really allowed to create is more Scientologists. So public Scientologists are different. We were instructed differently about their second dynamics, how to handle them on their second dynamics. And if we didn't want them to have a second dynamic, or if the executives didn't want them to have a second dynamic, we would encourage them. Most of the public that we had were artists. We encouraged them to focus and dive into their artwork, whatever that was, their craft, music, film, whatever that is. And there is a element of truth to this reference. Don't know the reference. Not going to show you where it's written. I'm a wog now. But what it basically says is that the act of creating gives you the same feeling of love. And